Welcome to the first part of a video series on AR-15 type piston systems. Here, as you can see, we have 4 different bolt carrier groups for piston systems for AR-15s directly or AR-15-ish platforms. You'll see why I say that in a minute. So the only true, I guess, AR-15 compatible bolt carrier group for piston system that we have right here is the superlative arm system. Very good system. Nice features like chamfering around the back edge, extra material here. I think people typically call these skis. Basically, all that stuff helps it go into the buffer tube better without causing gouging on the bottom side of the buffer tube. Very slick surface, DLC coated, super nice. The gas block assembly itself is so thin up top that it will fit under virtually every single handguard I've ever tried. You will see handguards out there that don't have a full top rail, a top rail that actually like dips down and apart, but basically everyone I've ever run into, as long as it has a full length top rail, with the exception of Hera arms, that piston system will actually fit under. So there are a couple different classes. I think I'd probably say 3 different classes of piston systems that I divide up according to how the piston itself, piston rod that is, or piston and piston rod, as you'll see. In the case of the superlative arm system, the piston is attached to the piston rod, so it's just one piece. How it actually goes into and works with the gas block. So in the superlative arm system, you have this piece out front, unscrews, the piston rod then goes in. It actually uses the same spring in here as your magazine catch for a spring return. The superlative arm says that's actually not necessary, but you know, put it in anyway. It just helps the rod go forward. That I find very interesting, considering how much effort and how much engineering goes into the return springs for rods for some of these other systems, most notably the HK416, but that is by no means the only one that has a very significant return spring. Let's see, so cool feature obviously with this is you have the centering divot in the front, which works with the end of the rod. So end of the rod goes in there, and it helps center it on the tombstone or the piston rod abutment, as you might say. Anyway, so that's basically it. It's a superlative system, pretty well known. A bunch of people have them. I've had a bunch of them over the years, sold several of them. This one's actually going to get sold in a minute because of something that we're about to come to. So, these next 2, leave that one aside for now. These are T91 bolt carrier groups. This is a true T91 bolt carrier group. So this is exactly what you'll see phosphated finish inside of a Wolf T91 upper. And what I find very interesting about this one, slight chamfering on the back, of course just like the superlative arm, but no skis on the bottom here. Completely flat surface up front. Now that is just like the Adams Arms one, and I've kind of wanted to get my hand on an Adams Arms bolt carrier group just to see if all of the dimensions are exactly the same. So other than that, pretty nondescript. It's basically one of your most basic ones that you'll see. Unfortunately, I do not have my T91 piston rod with me right now, because I'm getting a 6.5 Grindle barrel conversion for my T91, and I just got a second 6.5 Grindle barrel in. But I do have an extra T91 gas block at the moment. So these gas blocks kind of have a second type of interface. So obviously this one, this is fixed in place. Nothing about this gets removed except for the front plug. And then the piston rod goes out through the front. Well, this one, all it does is vent gas into the piston rod area. And the whole thing, the whole piston rod assembly can also come out the front. So both of these, very easy to use without actually taking off handguards, which is very important. Also, another small note about the superlative arm system. Because there is no return spring on this rod, that means that not only is it nice that this will fit under almost any handguard, but this will fit with literally any barrel nut, because it is the same diameter as your gas tube. And so there is not a single barrel nut out there that will not work with this. The length underneath this won't matter. Whether it has one of those like gas tube holes in the barrel nut won't matter, because this is the exact same diameter. So anything that's made for an AR-15 has to be made for this. So anyway, so getting back to the T91 system, that goes for this. This is actually sold by T91 Tactical, or at least they used to be called that. They just switched their name to the parent company, which is Argent Wolves. And if you look closely at it, you'll see this is very similar to the third type of SIG 516 bolt carrier group, which is basically identical to the Caracal 816 bolt carrier group. And this is, in fact, as far as I can tell, a Caracal 816 bolt carrier group. And if we'll see some pictures later in the second part of this video that'll show that. Anyway, has this little interesting feature there. So it's full auto compatible, skis, but also kind of sort of lightning cuts in the back there. As you can see, this is cut back compared to a regular one, more lightning cuts, but the overall like very outer diameter of the ribs here is wider than on a regular one. So yeah, just a bunch of stuff to help it move in the buffer tube more smoothly. Also, T91 has some, I forget the name of the company that makes them, but pneumatic buffers that have the front cut out so that they'll actually lock into the back of this. And that way this has really no way for it to gouge into the buffer tube, because it's actually locked into the buffer itself. Let's see, more lightning up here on the sides and so forth. Interesting thing about these two, even though they're both supposed to be for the T91, if you match up the front faces, let's get my lighting over here a little better, there's actually, maybe hard to see, there's a difference between where the front of the abutment for the piston rod actually starts, and the Caracal type starts sooner. And anyway, the back of the piston rod for the T91 is actually flat, hence the flat face for the regular T91. But the Caracal 816 one, as you can see, has this very nice divot in there to center the piston rod. And I haven't actually used this one yet, although I have used this. Works very well. T91's a great system. And so I'm very curious to see how the T91 piston rod will work with this. The end of the piston rod, even though it is flat on the center of the face, it is chamfered around the edge. So it should kind of work with this. And also because this does have a divot, then the difference in where it starts should be about right. But I'm still curious about the fact that T91's selling this, even though a normal manufacturer would say something like, oh, well, those two systems aren't compatible. It's like, well, maybe they are. And then the final system today, all familiar with my other videos, we have a Brownell's version of the HK416. Obviously, it doesn't have the little tail on the back there. Also chamfered in the back, skis on the bottom. Very slick surface. Got to be like DLC coated. That's the only coating I know that makes the surface this slick. Either that or someone did a really good job melaniting. And not so much divoted as a scalloped surface, I would call it. It's far more shallow. I'm not sure how much centering that actually does. You know, maybe it does some, but not as much as the others for sure. Also interesting, the scallop extends to the very edges of the piston rod block here, just like the curvature of this is to the edges. Also, this is a larger in diameter than the T91, and the T91 rod is also larger in diameter than the superlative arms is. So none of these rods are really cross-compatible, and the bushing that you will find in the front of your 416 T91 and bushings that are used with the superlative arm system, they're all going to be different sizes because each of the piston rods is a different size. And then the 416 uses yet another slightly different type of gas block interface, where of course you have your piston here. You got to take your handguard off in order to get the piston out, but it's different from other ones where you have to take the handguard off in order to get the piston out, as we'll see in the second video. As finally, as a little comparison, we have a CZ Brin 2 piston rod part here. This is pretty similar to how the T91 works, where you have a gas block, you have a key that goes into that gas block that regulates the gas, or can regulate gas, and then you have a piston in that key, your rod, extension, and return spring. And this can all be exited out the front of the gas block, so you don't have to remove the handguard in order to get to it. And that is it for the first video.